Okay, Edson Krenak, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Adam, for inviting me and having me in your show.
Well, let's start with the easy stuff. Could you mind telling the audience what cultural survival is and what your group is doing at COP30 in Brazil today?
Thank you. Cultural Survival is a 54-year-old organization based in US, in Cambridge. Um, and we work to uplift people's voices in the world. We support indigenous people's self-determination and rights. And we do it through our programs, advocacy program, indigenous-led fund programs, capacity building, and also collaboration with other organizations through coalitions. Then we are present in almost all continents. I can say that we are present in all continents, have partners in community partners in about 90 countries, and with a very strong work here in Brazil, where the COP is.
Hmm. And you are the Brazil program manager.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, because I just to further calibrate us, you're 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 with an indigenous group, or you're a part of an indigenous group who are in Brazil. And I was actually reading about the Krenek, um, interesting history, sad
Mhm.
history in some regards too. Um, but in terms of how climate change is affecting Brazil and specifically indigenous communities in Brazil, what are the stakes for groups like yours in something like COP30 when you're talking about fighting climate change and making sure that indigenous communities especially are involved in stopping the the horrible consequences of climate change?
Okay. Thank you for the question. Krenak people have a long history dealing with Brazilian state projects, development projects, and mining industry impacting the environment. Uh, these projects have been like almost a century contaminating rivers, removing mountains, forests in our region. In the last 5, 6 decades, we have seen our landscape change so drastically. Sometimes when you go abroad, we travel and you come back after a couple months, you feel like you are in another land, in another territory. It's so violent, it's so crazy because the land they demarcated for my people, it's a fraction of what is considered our traditional
Mm,
territories we have been fighting and for centuries. We are part of a people in the northeast of Brazil that was never defeated by the Portuguese crown.
right.
The Portuguese king even declared like a just war against our people, but they of course they exterminated the vast majority of us. Uh, but we are still here, surviving and resisting. We have been participating in COPs, this climate conference of the parties of UN, the United Nations, for many years. And we have seen, I can start giving a positive note.
Mm,
We have seen a growing participation of indigenous people, presence of indigenous people in these spaces. Indigenous youth, indigenous women, the indigenous people's knowledge systems have been recognized and by scientists like the IPCC, the UN International Body of Scientists for Climate. In the last report, they recognized the essential role of indigenous people's knowledges.
Mm,
Uh, However, what we see, unfortunately, in these spaces is more thought of indigenous presence as a decoration,
mm,
as a PR, let's say, project by states to say, look how we are cool, how we are nice, we are doing good, we are inviting indigenous peoples, traditional communities to be part of these spaces. But actually, internally, we are not part of the decision making. We are not part of defining the agenda. We are not part of defining the priorities of climate fight, climate solutions, and we still have a way to go. Uh, and for example, in Brazil, in this COP edition, we had last week marked by a huge protest of indigenous peoples outside of the venue because they didn't have access. We have
right.
a big presence, but we don't have really the communities and the peoples impacted directly by this so-called just transition. The projects related to that, mining, development project, the infrastructure for logistics, etc., they are not really present and even less part of a conversation. Then what is at stake here is not only our cultures, identities, and our future, but our territories. And
Mm,
what I mean about territories is actually the largest portion on the planet of protected biodiversity,
right.
of protected rivers, protected forests, protected mountains. And if I ask permission from my relatives from the north, the global north, huge areas of the Arctic, huge areas of other biomes that are being protected by indigenous peoples. And we, unfortunately, are protecting these rich, healthy environment with our blood, with our energy, with our sweat. It has been very, very hard for us to prove our role and the importance of our participation decision making, even though we are the champions, we are the first one protecting these territories. However, we are what the states do not understand that we are also the first ones to face the impact of climate change.
Right. No, thank you for all of that, and you covered a lot of ground. Um, I did. I understand how you're feeling about, the indigenous voices or the how indigenous voices are not being heard inside the conference. But I mean, I did see reports about those protests outside, which were, um, they were multiple protests, and they were mostly for the most part indigenous led. These protests that are happening outside
Mhm.
the conference. Do I have that
Mhm.
right? Like, and there was like something like
Exactly.
20,000 on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
even more. Well, indigenous peoples, for the first time, Adam, we have a COP conference, a climate conference uh, in the Amazon, in the
Mm.
huge tropical forest place.
Mm-hmm.
It's our home, it's our traditional home. If indigenous people uh, don't live here in the Amazon, have deep ties and connections with the Amazon because all secular and traditional trade routes, seeds, and all the goods and the gifts the Mother Earth, the forest give us in our other biomes. And we are the first time we have really to say opportunity to say we are hosting in our home, in our traditional home. Now it's important for us to say, to speak out loud. And when they block the blue zone, the COP venue is divided in two zones. A green
Right.
zone is more open, more public, more democratic, I'd say. However, as a defect in our democracies, the more democratic you are, less power you have,
Right.
right? Then in the blue zone where the power lays, where the decision making is taken, where the negotiations can really change the scenario and offer transformative solutions, it's already taken, sequestrated by oil, gas, and mining lobbyists. Has been like sequestrated by the states that have been doing almost nothing for the environment.
Right.
What they want is profit. Profit is been driving COP conferences for years, and that's why we are so frustrated and we are not happy with this copy because this COP has a huge opportunity to change for good two main areas related to the Paris Agreement. First is the adaptation capacity communities, cities, countries have to face the climate
Hmm.
crisis. Adaptation is a very strong word in the Paris Agreement and all these climate policies. But we have seen like more and more effort by the states and the industry to shape and design adaptation projects and plans according to their own ways,
Right.
where the environment, biome, and people, and especially human rights, are not on the top of the agenda. How you can design adaptation to climate if you don't put at the top of the agenda the right to a healthy environment, the right to water, to healthy food. This is complicated. And the second most important topic issue of this COP is financing.
Mm.
Uh, and indigenous people are fighting for direct financing for their communities and organizations because actually the way countries and corporations are designing the finance mechanism is to return profits for them,
Right.
is to support projects that are very contradictory in terms of climate solution. I will give you a very concrete example we are experiencing in our territory in
Mm.
Brazil, a valley called Jequitinhonha Valley in Minas Gerais state. Uh, Earlier this year, a Brazilian fund created to support climate solutions called Fundo Clima or Climate Fund, linked to the Brazilian Development Bank, uh, just approved the loan of half. I will make the exchange from a real currency to dollars here. It's about 200 million dollars to a mining company
Yeah.
that has no standard doesn't follow any regulation, any safety, any people safety, environment safety procedures to operate it's a lithium extraction in Brazil.
Okay.
They are just saying we are producing this lithium for the green economy, for clean energy, etc. But the methods and the source, as we say, the cradle of this project is has a huge impact on communities, environment, rivers, etc. Then they approve these funds, this huge amount of money for them, and the communities apply for 1% of this amount. They don't have access to this money. And
Mm.
if they have the conditions that is supposed for them to access the fund are so huge, bureaucratic that crash the community before they even accessing the funds to develop their real climate solutions.
Hmm. Sounds familiar. Um, you're talking about green zones and blue zones, and as you were talking about that, and the separation of, sort of. people who want action and the people who are capable of action. I'm also thinking of because it's inevitable when COP comes up, and maybe these people are just cynical and aren't really making a statement about the fight about climate change. But it's the the meme about like all the private planes going to COP, and then the massive carbon footprint of a carbon of a
Exactly.
private plane. Um, Inside the conference, is there that separation? Like, is there a bit of cynicism because a lot of the big name people, the Prince Williams, let's say,
Hmm.
are traveling by private plane, and there are people like you who are from the area and live in the area and are seeing the effects of climate change firsthand, and you know there are still these barriers of access. It's literally in your backyard, but
Hmm.
it's still tough to be heard. And I guess how do you and other activists like you cope with that? Because the whole idea of this a conference like this is to bring everyone together and not bring everyone together and to keep them apart.
Well, I don't know. Thank you for this strong point. Um, Honestly, I don't know if they're cynical or they are, I don't know, irresponsible or just really deaf. They don't want to really listen to others uh, because uh, many of these, I will use your word, cynical people and or, in organizations, they it seems they really believe that their proposals, their projects for climate will work, even though it's literally uh, proved by scientific and non-scientific organizations, civil society organizations, communities. The amount of evidence their methods are not working, you see in our everyday lives
Mm,
because the climate impact is already happening everywhere. And what we see, unfortunately, I will add a third zone here to do green and blue zone, what we are calling in our advocacy brief the is a non-word, it's not an invention, new term, but the sacrifice zones of just transition.
mm,
Those projects presented by industry aligned with the states, they are clearly, cynically creating sacrifice zones where peoples, cultures, communities, rivers, mountains, portions of biodiversity and biomes are deemed expendable, dispendable for this just transition. Because at the end of the day, uh, it exists to enrich and to keep rich countries, those countries full of jets and full of
right.
electric or non-electric cars in their streets to keep doing their business as usual, and while the rest of the world have to cope with all these impacts and living in these sacrifice zones. And yeah, this is our problem. But outside of the COP, I don't want to leave our audience. We appreciate they are here listening to us. I don't want to leave them with only the cynical
Sure.
in a hopeless. Then what do? We give up. We just turn off the light and leave the room. No, we outside of the COP, these protests. They are there are COP Village, there are the Summit People space, there are many other small spaces, but strong spaces in terms of storytelling, in terms of solutions, narratives, and solidarity, building up like a silent but powerful transformation. We have seen this transformation in many, many levels with and without the resources or a little of resources they can communities and local communities, indigenous peoples, traditional communities of the Amazon, they have been doing like amazing work to protect their communities.
For sure. I would note Marina Silva, who's the environment minister for Brazil. She called for a fossil fuel phase out, which is something I don't think you would hear Canada's environmental minister say. Or, I mean, the United States doesn't have an environmental minister. I don't know who the equivalent would be, maybe the Minister of the Interior or the Secretary of the Interior, but there's a way that this is talked about in the global South that you never hear with the same urgency in the global North. Can you talk a bit about, seeing seeing politicians who are from your region being a bit more forceful on what needs to be done to accomplish climate change goals and how, you know, where the power and the financing is, which is in the global north,
Mhm.
how difficult it is to not hear the same thing from somebody like, say, an environmental minister from even like Denmark or Finland or the UK or Canada. And, you know, how does that sort of affect, your advocacy as well?
Well, thank you. Well, I would call the civil society and the organizations in Canada, US, and these countries to be more to be bolder on these politicians. And I'm not saying that we are bolder. We are doing our what we can do here on the ground in Brazil. There is a huge political toll if they don't use the correct language, but
Right.
using language is not enough because the Brazilian government claims to be progressist, claims to be friendly, democratic, and it is, in fact, in many ways, in many aspects, has been very uh, prudent and cautious to use the right language. But we don't want that anymore as its government, this government rightly has been repeating, no, this is a COP not for talks, negotiation anymore. It's for action. It's a action COP. We need to see things happening, and unfortunately, is a two-mouthed government.
Mm,
On the one hand, we have Marina Silva with her beautiful speech, beautiful reflections, and her personal commitment to climate agenda. But on the other hand, we see Lula and the President Lula and the other ministers approving permissions to drill oil in the Amazon mouth.
mm, hmm
Lobbying for that, asking resources for that, funds for that, and other series of projects I mentioned at the beginning, and I could list dozens of them that are completely contradictory to that. We need consistency, we need coherence, we need really a commitment that goes beyond the political gain because people are already suffering. Adam, I am here close to a huge one of the top, maybe is the one of the biggest or largest water basin in the world.
mm,
Rivers here are amazing. And one of the largest, the most important river here is called Madeira River.
hmm
It's huge. It's a trade like a hydroport, full of hydroport river is the cradle of many cultures. Many people live from this river.
right,
But last year, this river faced the the worst drought in history. People could cross this river walking. The rivers disappeared, the fish
right,
disappeared, the water disappeared, and it, if you check the other rivers, uh, Amazon is in the Amazon. They are there, but they are not healthy anymore.
right,
They are they are full of metals, heavy metals, mercury, and impact of mining, impact of illegal activities in these shores. And we don't see investment and policies being discussed to protect those rivers. And you probably heard about the Mariana Dam collapse that
yes,
happened to my people 10 years ago. The worst
yes,
environmental crime happened in Brazil. And this crime, unfortunately, didn't change an inch in terms of regulation of mining dams and tailings in my country. And we need actions towards that, not beautiful speeches, not beautiful words and on paper. Indigenous peoples call these the society the paper society. Everything
Mm.
they are, everything they decide, everything they can offer is on paper, nothing else. And we are disappointed because of that.
And that's what you're saying is going to sound so familiar to people here in Canada who are listening to this, because I mean we have a community in southwestern Ontario that is living with mercury poisoning in their river and other chemicals because of paper mill that's long gone, but the poisoning remains. We have Mark Carney, our prime minister, who says a lot of nice things about the environment, but he keeps approving what he's been calling quote unquote nation building projects, which are all kind of extraction based or meant to support the extraction industry. And the Canadian government's trying to tag in Indigenous communities here, saying, well, this is going to help you. We're going to build roads into your communities. We're going to give you great jobs. We're going to have these other supports. And I, it's my impression that this is not the kind of action, whether it's in Brazil or whether it's in Canada, that's going to get us to our shared vision of not just like helping to adapt to climate change, but helping to reverse the effects of climate change as well.
Mhm. Yeah, because those solutions are top-down solutions.
Yeah.
They don't talk to people. They don't have any consultation. We are here advocating for robust and abiding free, prior, informed consent for those projects, which means we want solutions that come from discussing dialogue and proposals from the ground.
Mm,
Communities know what the Mother Earth needs. Communities know how to create a healthy environment that will bring a good water for you, a healthy and nutritious fruits for you, not fruits and food full of plastic, full of oil, full of contaminants to your table. People need to connect these discussions about climate with what they eat at the table, what they are giving to their babies, what they are giving to their kids, to their family. They have to connect that because this is the real jobs. Indigenous communities are not looking for new jobs,
right.
tech jobs. We're not looking for that. We are looking for protecting the conditions that keep us not only alive, but healthily alive, happily alive. Not only us, but all other species as well. We have to think about our planet as part of our planet. It is a ecosystem of so many other species. We depend on them. We cannot kill them with pesticides. We cannot kill them with these crazy projects for the sake of jobs. What is job if you don't have what is a job if you don't have health? If you don't have like a good water, if you don't have a food, healthy food for you,
Mm.
then job will not compensate for that.
For sure, and I think that is the message that we need to continually drive home. I hope some people down there in Brazil are hearing it in these last few days of the conference, and so we'll let you get back to spreading it. So, Edson Krenak, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. Have a nice day.